Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for May 24th, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is in her third term as Alderman from Ward 6 and is the current president of the Somerville Board of Aldermen. A native of Providence, Rhode Island, and Somerville resident for more than 10 years. She makes her home in the Davis Square district of the city. She is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island and UMass McCormick School of Policy Studies, and is currently employed by the Massachusetts chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. She is the former legislative aide to then State Representative Pat Jalen, now Senator, and one of the co-founders of the Progressive Democrats of Somerville. She is an outspoken advocate for such issues as affordable housing, smart transportation like the extension of the Green Line, and locally owned and operated independent businesses, strong public schools, and transparency and openness in local government. It is my pleasure to welcome back for her second visit to Greater Somerville, Alderman Rebekah Gewirtz, Ward 6 Alderman, and current President of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Somerville. The longer you stay, the more titles you get.
That's how it seems.
But the succession went smoothly. We've been trying to coordinate the first visit by the new President of the Board of Aldermen.
I know, and now it's halfway through.
Here you go.
It goes fast.
But at least you're working for the taxpayers. There
yes,
you go.
Very
but Vice President last year, President this year. Momentous happenings in the world of politics. Yesterday in the city of Somerville, the Board of Elections said all you candidates for re-election and newcomers, come on up and pull your papers. And
I pulled my papers today.
There you go.
So that was a leading thing.
That was a big lead-in to, did you pull your papers yet?
I sure did.
And you did. So you're running for re-election for a fourth term.
Which is almost impossible for me to believe.
There you go.
I can't believe how fast it's going by. But.
Seems like yesterday I saw you hanging out at the bus stop at Davis Square.
Right, I know.
By yourself.
More or less.
And well, that's politics in the big city.
Right, knocking on doors.
You start out slow, and it's you and a couple of friends, and then before you know it, when you win, you got all kinds of new friends. All of us experience it.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I know that you're taking time out of what will be one of the busiest seasons.
Yes.
Coming up very, very soon.
Yes.
So, with your kind permission, I'm going to do one public service announcement, as is our habit here on Greater Somerville for the coming week. The big event of May coming up on Sunday is the Memorial Day Parade. Be aware that there will be a lot of parking restrictions, mainly on Highland Avenue, Davis Square, and Teal Square. So be very careful of the parking restrictions, and I think they start those early on Sunday morning. So be careful, no more tickets.
But come out and watch the parade.
Come out and watch the parade. I suspect that Alderman Gewirtz will be in Ward 6.
I will be there. No, I'll be walking in the parade.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we do that every year.
That's right.
Walk in the parade.
Yeah, I've seen you for the past few years.
Usually
last
me
year,
and Carl Shortino are arm in arm.
There you go. There you go. Well, usually I'm at Cedar Street.
Oh, right. Yes.
We usually do Cedar and Highland. One year I think we did Lowell and Highland, but it gets a little crowded there. And then, my mom had some mobility problems last year, so we kind of took the lowest up to Highland, and we were at the corner of Willow and Highland.
Oh, okay. That's right near where I live.
There it is.
Right near Willow and Highland.
So, hopefully, maybe Mom will make it again this year, but we'll see.
Of course she will.
Yeah, we'll be positive about it.
We'll be positive, yeah.
Ward 6. Happenings.
There is so much to talk about in Ward 6.
There's a lot.
So much going on. It is one of the most vibrant places in the whole city. We have a new project going on right now where we have the bike path extension that's happening behind the Rite Aid, which I think is going to make the path a lot more accessible to a lot more people. It's going to
let's just, for the folks at home, that bike path kind of dead ends
I
at
guess
the parking lot.
we should call it the community
path. I'm always corrected by the community path people. It's the community path in Somerville.
Yes.
That bicyclists use.
Yes.
And walkers.
And people with strollers and people with dogs and people with mobility issues. Everybody uses it.
So
it's a huge asset.
Right now it kind of dead ends at that Rite Aid parking lot, and they're doing some reconstruction in there.
That's right. Yeah. So it's going to actually continue out from the Rite Aid parking lot out all the way up to the T.
Great.
to the head house. So it's going to look a lot better. It's going to look great. Once
Yeah,
it's done.
and it's, you know, for the uninitiated in Somerville who like to come through, once they get to Davis Square, whichever direction they're coming from, whether it's eastbound or westbound, that whole intersection of where is the actual bike path is very dangerous for them. So.
It is, and it can be confusing for a lot of people because where do you go once you're out in front of the head house on College Ave? And so I actually did a lot of work with the former bike and pedestrian coordinator, Steve Winslow. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
To try to figure out if we should actually try to physically continue the path to the other side where it continues, which is, for the people at home who don't know, I'm sure most people do who are watching this, but where it continues behind the head house on Holland Street. So we actually talked about continuing it through the square,
right.
But there wasn't a lot of community support to add a bike lane in the square, which would have made it a little bit. Sorry, someone's just joined us.
That's okay. We're being adjusted.
Being adjusted.
This is what they call the Adjustment Bureau.
Oh, look, and we have a visitor outside, too.
We have a visitor. We can wave.
Hi.
I love when they come
I
in.
turned on the phone.
I love when they come and wave. It's like kind of being on the Today Show.
Yeah, right.
You know? They're all behind you. So the continuation of the community path,
Yes.
the reconfiguration
Right.
of all of it.
So we didn't want to actually continue the physical path in the square, but you know, I think we're going to get better signage and we're going to have a much more revamped and better path.
A lot safer.
A lot safer.
Lot safer.
A lot safer.
You have some bigger developments still going on,
yes.
yet more development in Davis Square. We had on the show about 2 or 3 weeks ago a gentleman named Tom Bach.
I actually watched the episode.
Yeah, and I guess that's still, after all these years, slightly controversial in terms of its size and its scope, and it's been revamped 1 or 2 times, you know, in terms of neighborhood input. And you know, Tom presented his case very well. And I think I had emails that came back, and I think people were maybe slightly confused about the development that we were talking about on the show here is not the same one that's beside the Rosebud.
It's very confusing. People often think it's the same thing, but it's very different. The one next to the Rosebud is at Summer and Cutter. That's already been approved. That's already being built. I actually think it's going to be a nice structure. It's going to be, the bottom floor is going to be retail. The second floor is going to be offices, and the third and fourth floor are going to be residential. And it's only going to be 6 units, so it's going to be manageable. They're going to be rental units, 2 bedrooms each, which is nice. You know, I mean, I think that's sort of the kind of development we're looking for.
Yeah, not massive, unless there is space.
We're not talking 31 units. Whereas at 343 Summer Street, the Shaft site, that's what the proposal is on the table. 31 units crammed in.
Right on Summer Street.
Right on Summer Street. And the neighbors are all opposed. And, we've been over it and over it with this developer. They need to work with the neighborhood. And I've been incredibly frustrated by their unwillingness to do so. They did, to their credit, participate in some mediation process that the city sponsored. And that didn't end up working out. They were unwilling. It's my understanding. I didn't participate in it, but it was my understanding they were just unwilling to move on the number of units. And 31 units in a dense building is too many for that neighborhood. You
know, it's really sad, Rebekah. I'm not going to comment on, you know, how you operate within the developments in Ward 6, but you know, we have in Ward 5, we have the largest residential development in the city. At the Max Pack site. At the Max Pack site. Yeah. It took us a long time, but the developers cooperated. You know, when the community would push back and say, here's what we think should happen, there was a lot of negotiation and back and forth. And I can honestly say, participating in that for almost 5 years, there was never a point where the developer said, absolutely not. So, you know, there are
wonderful, and that's exactly how developers should behave with respect to neighborhoods. They are coming into a neighborhood that is pre-existing, that is already there. People who know each other, people who've lived side by side, some for many, many, many years, and have an idea of what they want to see happen in where they live. And so, for someone to come in and say, "This is what we're doing, and we're going to push it through, and we don't care what you think," is unacceptable to me. And the neighbors have really made themselves heard. This is going to come up on June 8th. Before the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll certainly be there. I've written testimony. I'll present oral testimony, you know, in opposition to the way they're moving forward and to the plan in place. You know, one unfortunate part of this situation is that the VFW has been sort of wrapped into it.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know,
Well, Tom Buck made that very clear on the show, that the opposition was not in terms of the the Veterans Dilboy Post and what they were trying to do. The opposition was really into the excessive amount of condos trying to go in there.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think everybody agrees that the Dilboy VFW Post should have a new building. They should have a handicapped accessible building. They should have a nice place where they can go. I mean, who should be honored more and cherished more? You know, I mean, the veterans of foreign wars have you know, given their whole lives in service to this country and to us. And so, you know, I have a huge amount of respect for them, for their work, and for their commitment to the community. And in addition, the fact that they are generous with their space. They let the city use the space for elections. They let community groups come and use the space. Now, I know they you know, it's not like they let them use it for free, but they open it up for that type of use when they really don't have to do that.
Right.
So, you know, it's just very unfortunate that the VFW is caught in this sort of battle, if you will.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you've dealt with developers in your ward, and I've dealt with them, you know, citywide and mainly in Ward 5. Developers a lot of times find the Achilles heel. You know, I mean, who's going to oppose a new Dilboy Post? Who's going to dare come out in opposition against VFW? Well, it's unfortunate, but you know, I wish Tom Bach a lot of good luck, and I wish you a lot of good luck when you go before the ZBA.
Thank you.
What else is happening in Ward 6?
So we are embarking on a Davis Square infrastructure project. Davis Square, as you might have noticed, is beginning to show its age. You know?
A little tattered around the edge?
A little tattered around the edges. You know, it's obviously vibrant. It's a place where people want to be and live and work and be part of the community. It's been designated as a transit-oriented site by the MBTA, where you have housing and business and transit all within, you know, walking distance. I mean, the real estate prices speak for themselves with respect to how desirable it is. But we need to make sure.
That's really the conundrum, though, isn't it? Once you build something up and you make it desirable, gentrification takes over. You know, it becomes a lot less affordable. It
does, and it has. And I think we need to do more to make sure that people can stay in our community. I worked very hard several years ago on an ordinance that was to try to protect renters and to try to protect long-term renters in their housing, and to also make the condo conversion rules clearer to landlords and renters. It didn't move, unfortunately, and I don't know that it ever will, but I think that would have been a nice, good, important step. I also think it's a learning experience for when the Green Line extension comes, because we need to be talking about affordable housing now, before the Green Line comes.
Yeah, it'll be too late. You know, the speculators are here now.
Right.
You know?
I mean, Union Square is going to explode. Yeah. You know, it's going to be just like what happened with Davis. And, you know, it's great that Davis is so desirable, right? It's great that people want to live there and be part of it, but at the same time, we have a community that we want to preserve.
It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
It always has been. You know, for many years I lived in Boston. It was the same thing. Yeah. You know, you moved into a kind of a tattered around the edge neighborhood, and then before you knew it, it became fashionable and trendy, and prices start to creep up, and people get pushed out.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't know about you, and I won't ask you. I won't put you on the hot seat. That's for later in the show. You know, I've always been a proponent of 15% affordable housing on the, you know, the 12.5. I mean,
I'm not on the hot seat. I'm with you, Joe.
I think Cambridge is at 15%. Yep. I think Boston, in certain instances, they're at 15%. They have the two levels.
And people need to be real clear about what affordable housing means.
Right.
It's affordable housing is housing for people like firefighters, police officers, teachers, people who are middle class people, you know, who want to be able to stay in a community.
Yeah, it's not for, you know, a family of four. It is for a family of four making $40,000 a year, but it's also for a family of two only making $50,000 a year. I mean, you know, it's such
or depending, it could be even more.
Right.
They could be making more and still qualify.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword here in the city. You know, the more development that we take in and the more the mayor keeps pushing, make us a better place to live, work, and play, that's terrific. But you've got to be taking care of our seniors and our less affluent folks at the same time. So.
It's
another
always
show?
been.
Want to come on and do another show about that?
I would love to. It's always been my, one of my very, very top priorities is recognizing the contributions of the people who grew up here, who spent their whole lives here, who have contributed, and who want to be able to stay here. I mean, that should be a priority of ours. Yep. So, there's also a lot of property tax incentives and breaks that people can seek out who are seniors who qualify in terms of income. So I hear about people who are property rich, but who are, in other ways not affluent.
Right. They're past their earning capacity.
Right, but maybe they bought a house in Davis Square in the 40s or the 50s, for maybe $20,000,
right.
and now
they're
it's
sitting
worth
on $650,000 to $700,000
to $1 million.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Especially these places that get converted into condos. I mean, they're looking at a huge amount of money. So in order for them to be able to stay, there are these programs that are available. So I would urge people who are watching at home, if this is something that concerns you, that you're nervous about, go to City Hall, contact me, call up on the phone. There are programs that are geared towards trying to keep people.
It's a good point, and even if you're not in that category, the over 65 category, but of your parents who live in the city, and they may need some assistance in trying to figure that stuff out. I mean, trust me, from having older parents, sometimes they don't want to share everything with the kids, but it's a good benefit and it's a good bit of information to have about the programs that are available through the city. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Let's move into budget sessions. Ooh.
Joe, don't put people to sleep.
All right, before we go to the most boring part of Greater Somerville but tonight, let's talk about the board itself.
Okay.
You took over in January. Your new vice president is Tom Taylor.
Tom Taylor.
And you've waded through some issues, and I think one of the issues that were covered in the newspaper from the time that it first surfaced was the mayor proposed to float a $25 million bond for infrastructure improvements in Assembly Square.
Yes.
So the short backstory was, when the good times were rolling, Federal Realty, who is the developer for Assembly Square, warranted to the city in the covenant that we'll pay for that.
It's a legally binding document that they signed saying they would build the infrastructure, all of the infrastructure.
And then 2008, 2009, the bottom falls out of the market. Everybody's got to readjust.
I'm not sure that the bottom fell out of their market.
She's ready. She's ready to fight, I can tell.
I will just say that Federal Realty Investment Trust has a net worth of $4 billion.
Yep. And that's part of the thing that confused a lot of the residents of the city of taxpayers, I should say, the city of Somerville, because they looked at it from the standpoint of, well, wait a minute. First, you tell us these guys represented to us that they were going to pay for the infrastructure. Then you turn around and say they can't afford it, but we happen to know that they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
They don't even need to be backed by a bank.
So let's go to the knockdown dragout that happened over the course of about, I think, 3 Board of Alderman meetings.
At least, and then multiple subcommittee meetings.
And some of them were publicized.
Yep, there are pictures of them.
And in the final analysis, the mayor made his pitch, Federal Realty made their pitch, people came up to speak pro and against. And in the end, the final analysis, you voted no. You said no. On principle, and you stated very eloquently the reason why you were voting no on this. So the question comes down is, were the other 9 wrong?
I certainly hope not. This was a gamble. And it was, I needed some solid assurances in order to vote to take that gamble. In the absence of those assurances, I wasn't willing to take it. And I know everyone in the city hopes that the gamble pays off. That it ultimately works out. That we,
the taxpayers, don't get holding the bag.
Right. That we don't get left holding the bag. One of my major concerns, in addition to the fact that there is a signed legal covenant that Federal Realty Investment Trust would build all the infrastructure at Assembly Square. So
that'd be nice if we could get that one done.
Putting that aside, they needed to give us some guarantees, or they needed, not even guarantees, just some assurances in writing that said they were going to seek out research and development. Their Federal Realty's specialty is retail and residential. Retail and residential isn't going to take us to the finish line in this project.
Yeah, the argument there is it doesn't pour as much back into
the property
tax
value,
rolls.
right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason we want to develop Assembly Square is to reap those benefits and
create jobs, create additional revenue. Don't let it be a drain on the city's current. Yeah.
What they promised us is 3 buildings at core and shell. They would not promise to
skeleton.
What you picture of core and shell.
Yeah.
They did not promise to tenant those buildings. They did not promise a timeline of when they would complete the build out. They didn't promise they wouldn't come back looking for an additional subsidy from the city when they were done building those buildings at core and shell. This is a company that I frankly feel could have and should have taken on this cost. Somerville has a $7.5 million deficit this year. That is huge for us. As the years go by, we see local aid and federal aid reduced and reduced and reduced. So it's sort of a dual argument, right? So on the one hand, Federal Realty, who's supposed to be our partner in this, should have come forward and given what they had promised that they would. And at the same time, we need to make sure that it's developed there so that we can try to generate property tax revenue so that we can fill our budget holes.
And I guess what it came down to in the end, you took your hits, in the media for being the single lone vote no, and the 9 aldermen who voted yes, they took their hits for spending money, the taxpayers' money, on a gamble because there were no guarantees. So. It wasn't a case of where everybody was going to come away from the table happy.
Right. And I just want to be clear that if those assurances had been in place, and maybe that means it would have taken more time to work through the process, it may have been a gamble I would have been willing to take.
Yep.
But in the absence of that, I just felt, at that moment, without those assurances, I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do.
I know a lot of investment bankers, and they're very, very free with their own money. I mean, with other people's money. But when it comes to their own, they're a lot more cautious about how they make the investments. So
we were taking all the upfront risk.
Right, we took the risk.
We took the upfront risk, and I was asking for something for us to make sure that our taxpayers were protected.
Here's the way I would have done. So the next time you're faced with that, tell them to put $25 million escrow. It's still their money, but if the thing fails, we take the $25 million.
Well, what is in place is that if they don't build by certain time periods, these 3 buildings, we get to take the money back.
Right.
So, but again...
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Right. And again, it's 3 buildings at core and shell and no timeline for future build out. But I hope this gamble pays off.
Well, you're going to lose 1 board member anyway this year.
I know.
Alderman Perro is not going to seek re-election.
Yes, I understand.
We have a race in 7.
Yep, Ward 7.
A race in 4.
That's Alderman Perro's seat.
And I also hear that there was an additional 5th candidate for Alderman at Large who pulled papers yesterday.
I just heard that today when I went to pick up my paper.
So it looks like 3 races in the city. You suspect you're going to be the lone candidate again this year? Anybody polling? Anybody?
I've been challenged every year.
Yeah.
I was challenged in 2009, was that the last election? And 2007.
Yep.
And then I challenged someone else in 2005. So we'll see. I mean, I think I always say that if people want to and they feel so inclined, people should run for office.
Well, I mean, I've always encouraged, if you feel as though you got a platform and you want people to listen to it, get up there.
Right.
Get up there, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money.
Right.
Costs a lot of money to run an effective campaign.
It sure does.
But to pull papers and go around and get 100 signatures from friends and family doesn't take a whole lot.
Well, they have to live in that neighborhood to sign your papers.
Within the ward.
Right. But I actually do think if someone's going to make a decision to run, I think they should really run. And it shouldn't just be about getting on the ballot.
Right.
It should be, here's who I am and what I stand for and why I'm running. And
well, as you know, you got to have the fire in the belly to do it.
You sure do. Yeah. And a lot of it can be very taxing. You know, when I first ran in '05, I knocked on doors every night, Monday through Thursday, and both weekend days, just constantly. I love to joke that on the last day, it was a couple days before Election Day, I was about to knock on someone's door, and she opened the door, and she was like, I get it.
I get it. You
I'm
want my vote.
for you.
Well, sometimes you got to do it. So
I was like, this election has to come soon because I really saturated.
Well, you're gonna have fun running for re-election this year and guiding the budget sessions up at City Hall.
Yes.
So
yes,
we got a deficit. There's going to be cuts. There's going to be realignment of city programs. Not everyone is going to be happy again this year.
Right.
You went through it last year as vice president of the board.
We sure did.
And this year, I think it may be a little bit more painful because we don't have any stimulus money.
Right.
All the federal stimulus money is gone. 2.3 spent on Magoon Square. Thank you very much. But it's going to be tough this year.
It is going to be tough this year. I mean, last year a proposal was on the table to lay off all of the school custodians.
Right.
Luckily,
didn't go over well.
It did not go over well. I didn't think that was right at all. And this was supposed to be about a shared sacrifice budget, and it seemed like it was shared sacrifice among school custodians.
It looked like it was a targeted group.
I really had trouble with that, and so we had some heated debates and conversations. I know other people did too, or other members of the board were very concerned. So this year, my expectation is that there won't be a certain group that's targeted for sort of removal from the budget.
Try to spread it out.
But that there's
That's
more.
That's kind of the meaning of the word shared sacrifice, though, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, last year, not to whatever, but I spent hours and hours and hours and hours pouring through the budget books and looking for places where we could find savings.
Yeah.
I found over $500,000, which I presented at the budget meeting where we did the cuts, and I was voted down every time.
You've been in office long enough to know sometimes there are sacred cows built within that budget.
Right,
yeah.
Right. But I was looking for how do we share it across the board a little bit more than just target it towards one group. But one of the conundrums I think about being an alderman is that we don't have the power to add things to the budget or to move things around.
Your only power is to cut.
We can only cut.
Yeah.
We can only cut from the budget. So.
Well, I want to wish you good luck in the budget season.
Is that it?
We're getting close. We're getting very close. Good luck with the re-election.
Thanks, Joe.
You have a new website? Or same website?
Same website, but it's been revamped. I also have an e-newsletter.
Give it to the folks out there.
It's RebekahGewirtz.org, and it's very difficult to spell my name.
There you go. Just go to any one of the city's websites. I want to thank Rebekah Gewirtz, Alderman from Ward 6, current board president, Somerville Board of Aldermen. Don't forget the Memorial Day Parade. Honor our veterans and our city. See you next week. As always, stay safe and stay informed. Good night, Somerville.
Good night.